From day one, we are told who we should be, how to live, and what's acceptable. Before we even have a chance to discover ourselves, our society has already drawn those lines for us. But what happens when those lines are keeping us from knowing and embracing who we truly are? Welcome to Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox, a podcast about unpacking and unlearning everything that's kept you from living as your true self. Through honest conversations about your internal emotional landscape, sexuality, coming out later in life, relationships, and the journey to self-acceptance, we break free from the boxes we never chose. Today is April 5th, and in the United States, it is a day where there are protests across the country, the hands-off protests. And I just wanted to speak a little bit about the idea of hands-off in a slightly different way that has to do with consent and being in situations as women where we say no, and that is not enough to stop what is wanted by men in our presence. I'm going to rewind a little bit. I have a post on social media where I talk about childhood sexual abuse and being gay. And what I say in this post is your childhood sexual trauma does not make you gay. Your childhood sexual trauma keeps you from knowing yourself and your sexuality, so it keeps you from your sexuality and your queerness. And for many of us that come out later in life, this is true. And I'm going to say, at least for me, this is true. Now, I don't love to be black or white about things. And so in this particular topic, I don't mean to discredit how you have interpreted and taken the meaning of your sexual traumas, sexual assaults, and what you have done with them with your sexuality. This comes up for me because I was recently chatting with a friend who identifies as gay. She is partnered with a woman, and she recently shared with me that she suddenly started having memories of different events from her 20s where she very clearly said no to men that she either was out on a date with or somebody she met out, and ended up spending a few hours with, maybe going back to her place or to their place, but clearly said no multiple times about having sexual intimacy. That boundary was, steamrolled over, and she just sort of gave in. And this happened so many times in her 20s that some part of her felt like being with a woman is just easier because you don't have to worry about that happening. So I want to also give credit to those of you out there and give you validation for your choice in being safe with a sexual partner. If you chose to be with a woman instead of being with men because you did not feel safe with men, because when you said no, they did not hear that as stop. They heard it as, I can just push past it. And it was really interesting because this friend and I were having a conversation about this, and she was wondering on some level, what if I'm not really gay? What if I chose to be with a female partner because of my early sexual assaults that I never even labeled as such? What if the reason I did not want to be with men was because of that and not because I'm actually gay? It's an interesting question, right? I don't have a definitive answer. I usually live in the gray. And I do believe that if you are sexually intimate with women and you enjoy it, that you are not completely on one side of the spectrum heterosexual. You're somewhere on that sexuality spectrum. This friend of mine was quite concerned about whether or not this made her gay. And that idea was pretty concerning for her. Is the only reason I've chosen a female partner because I've been the victim of sexual assault repeatedly. So again, as I said, I don't have the answer. It was just an interesting conversation we were having. I wanted to share a little bit about my own history around sexual trauma and not go into detail, but just say I had a very early molestation when I was about 6 years old. And it was the father of my best friend on a sleepover. I never told anybody about it. But as I got into my early adolescence, I started to develop almost like a Lolita syndrome, where I realized I had some power over men and that I could seduce them and in some ways kind of be the one to make them do what I want. So I kind of took the power. Really, I only realized later in life, I took that power to find a way to feel less like a victim and less terrified of men. And I learned how to be a seductress. I was very skillful at it. My friends looked to me like I was the expert in flirting. I was the expert in getting a guy, any guy I wanted. I knew how to get him. And they were not wrong. That gave me a great feeling of power when early in life I had felt disempowered as a very young child. And then again, in those early years, there were various sexual assaults that happened because I had been trying on that seductress role and landed myself in situations that I did not want to be in and did not know how to get out of them. And I was well underage in those moments. And all of that came from being taken advantage of as a young child for a full adult man's sick pleasure. All of what I developed to undo that and to overcome that came out of that very early experience I had that I did not tell anybody about. In fact, I told my parents about it when I was 25, but up until that point, not only did I not tell anybody about it, I did not remember it. And the moment that I remembered it was in college. I was a psychology major at George Washington University, and I was in a criminal psychology class. And this was back in the 80s. My professor, it's a very strange thing for a professor to do, I think, but my professor asked for a show of hands for anybody in the class that had been touched inappropriately by an adult when they were, I think it was 16 or under or 17 or under. And my hand went up. And it was almost as if my arm wasn't attached to my body. I kind of watched it go up and I was like, what is happening? And I had a couple friends in the class and they also looked over at me and they were like, what? And that was when I was 19. And that was my first memory, conscious memory of having been molested at the age of 6. And what I said to my friends was, yeah, this happened, but it had no effect on me at all. Absolutely no effect. Little did I know the effect that it had was huge. And I believe that I was gay from the time I was very little. I was interested in girls. I had crushes on girls. I was curious about girls. And with boys, it was more of a power thing. I needed to overpower them. And I had no idea I was gay. I didn't even know being gay was a possibility in my childhood. I knew of gay men. I saw gay men in my parents' age group, our decorator for our house, or the trainer for our dogs, or the man that cut my mother's hair, and eventually mine. But I never saw men partnered together. And I certainly never thought of or had any model for two women being together. And so I never even thought that there was any possibility of this, of two women being together in any other way other than to just turn on guys. So I just didn't give it a whole lot of energy. And then I think the other thing that happened to me was in college, I had a boyfriend mostly through my entire time in college, and he would beg me to have sexual experiences with women so he could watch. This turned me off to the idea. I did not want to do something like that for him to be turned on. So there were many places along my developmental path where I could not follow what was most natural for me, and really where there actually was desire, not consciously, but it was there when I look back. I could not follow that because of my sexual trauma history. It kept me on a path where I needed to overcome and overpower men so that I was not a victim of what happened to me. And in the shadow of that, there was no space for my sexuality to shine through until it did at 32. So I just want to say, whatever your story is, however you came into your sexuality early in life, in the middle of life, or a lot later in life, because there just were so many layers of conditioning, societal conditioning, programming. Whenever you came into yourself, if you have a history of sexual trauma, it's all valid. It doesn't mean that you are not who you are today. It doesn't mean that, this friend of mine that is wondering, am I really gay? Well, she's queer. She's definitely queer because she does enjoy being with women. It does turn her on. And there are many women out there who are not open to that. Now, whether it's just a matter of being open or it's truly deeply wired in them that they are deeply attracted to men and not attracted to women, I don't have the answer for that. But if you have been a victim of sexual trauma, sexual abuse, and you have been dating women, whatever that history means to you is valid. So I just felt it was important to bring this up as these marches are going on today, the hands-off marches. I started just getting curious about hands-off, saying no, being taken advantage of, and then this conversation that I had with a friend. I would love to hear your comments and your feedback on this. So if you've had an experience early in life and you feel like that is why you are gay, I would love to hear about it. Send me an email, Samantha@unboxyoursexuality.com. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being here. And I'll be back soon, either with some more curiosities or with another interview with a woman working hard to access her authentic self. Thank you for spending this time with me on Unbox Yourself with Samantha Fox. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. It helps more folks find these conversations. If you're ready to unbox from something that's keeping you stuck, I would love to support you. You can find the application to the show at unboxyoursexuality.com. Let's stay connected. Find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Lesbian Curiosity Coach. Give me a follow and join the conversation. Remember, we only have this one time through. Why not unbox yourself and let your true self shine in all its beautiful glory?